Welcome to another episode, and you're listening to The Lad Idea with Sachin Kumar. So, on this episode, we're going to be discussing about supernatural and paranormal incidents. So, we've basically divided the whole thing into two halves. On the first half, we're going to be discussing some real life situations as well as share our different views on supernatural from two different cultural points. And on the second half, we're going to be analyzing some real life situations. So I have with me my friend Abdul Wahab. So let's get started. What are some of those real life experiences that you had in your life? Like ghost experiences,
Actually
obviously.
have any experiences. It's just old stories. You hear people saying, this happened to me, or I've had somebody tell this to me. How about you?
Not exactly the same thing, you know. It never really happened to me, but a really close person. He was working for a company, so which was located in a very remote area. The company's accommodation and like the work area is within the same place. So you work, then you straight head back to your room. It's a very tight packed schedule. So while sleeping, he used to see a woman in black clothing who used to choke him. He couldn't say anything. He couldn't move his legs. He couldn't move his hands. So that's basically it. Towards the end, we'll talk about the actual reality behind it.
Yeah.
What about you?
I've actually had a similar story. It happened to a really close friend of mine, so I can kind of validate he wasn't lying. He went back home for holidays. So he lives in near a mountainous area. Late at night, he usually goes for walks and stuff. So one day he said I was sitting just next to some trees, and in the distance he saw a few of people surrounding a fire for some reason. It was like they're just saying some random things. I didn't understand them. And I just kept on watching them. I just kept on watching them. It was funny at first. Then they spotted him, and he just ran, and they ran behind him. And he was far away, so they couldn't catch him. But he's like, I always felt like something was behind me. And he forgot about it. A few weeks later, he came back to UAE. Then he's like, oh, I don't know, when I came back, it was different. I wasn't myself anymore. He was a very religious person. He said, I couldn't pray anymore. I couldn't recite Quran anymore. He just said, I didn't feel like doing anything like that. And he kept saying, whenever I used to wake up, he had scars on his hand, which was, up till that point, you can just see he was just hallucinating, but then scars, that's something physical.
So, like speaking of Quran, like what do Muslims think about the concept of supernatural? I've heard about jinns and stuff. So, like, what does the Arabic culture have to say about the whole supernatural thing?
Obviously, like any part of the world, or every region has its own folklores and superstitions and whatever stories they pass down generations. But in reality, just Islam really speaks about one thing. We don't believe in souls. Some people say souls. The ones in movies and stuff, they say souls, and they say ghosts and demons. I don't know, things like that. In Islam, I don't think none of these things are there. Especially, I can confirm, like for souls, once you die, that's it. You're just stuck in another world. You can't come back and haunt people and stuff. The only thing which can resemble these things that's mentioned in Islam, as you said, jinns. These are completely separate species. They have their own, societies and families. They have normal lives, just almost like us, and they don't like to interact with humans. They're actually very terrified of humans. So, but the same way we have humans who go and try to interact with them, there are jinns who try to interact with humans. So it is possible to make contact, but it's never really pleasant. You shouldn't try to contact them or anything. So that's
Disclaimer.
yeah.
So,
What about you guys? You're Hindu, right? So what does Hinduism say about this?
So in Hinduism, it's a very complicated affair because even if you take the religion itself, it's not an organized religion like, let's say,
Yeah,
Islam, Christianity, Judaism. So Hinduism is basically an umbrella term for different cultures, traditions, customs within like the Indian subcontinent. Let me
yeah,
tell you something interesting. Like even the word Hindu was actually given by you guys, the Arabs. So it was the Arab traders who gave the word
yeah,
Hind, Al Hind. Even now in Arabic, we refer to India as Al Hind.
yeah,
So that's a bit of history about Hinduism. Everybody's concept about the supernatural, even God, and even life after death and all these things are really different. So my Hinduism or my concept of God may not be exactly same as another person's. So there's nothing called pan-Indian Hinduism, like Hinduism for everyone. There's nothing common. Let me share with you a small example. So there's this folklore in the southern part of India, which is where I'm from, called Kutti Chatan. Try pronouncing it.
No, I'm not gonna try.
So Kutti Chatan is one of those goblin creatures from the European culture. So they are midgets, midget spirits. So for example, if I got beef with you, I mean, not the beef, like problem, like salfa. So if I have trouble with you, like if I have some, if I'm against you, I can really hire Kutti Chatan to cause trouble to you. Like, maybe haunt you.
Like a mythical creature. What would a mythical creature want? Like money?
There are different ways you can please. It has certain demands. You please those demands, it does certain things. Like how you do for the jinns. So on one hand, it's considered as a negative entity. It's considered as something that is bad. But on the other hand, there are actually temples dedicated to Kutti Chatan. So there are places of worship for Kutti Chatan. So there are certain sections of people who worship Kutti Chatan. That is one example. And another example would be the concept of Yakshi. Try pronouncing it. This is simple.
Yeah, Yakshi. Right?
Yakshi is a female spirit. Again, the ladies, for some reason, a lady in white clothing, a lady spirit in white clothing that roams around at night, attracts men and sucks their blood. So basically like a vampire, or those ghosts from the Japanese anime that you can see. So on one hand, Yakshi is largely seen, especially in the Indian pop culture, Yakshi is represented as something, like the status of a vampire, something negative or something evil. On the other hand, there are actually temples dedicated to Yakshi. Like there are places of worship where people consider Yakshi as a demigod. So the whole concept of good, bad, evil, so nothing is exactly defined. So that's a bit of background about Hinduism. So
now knowing this, what do you think your friend was seeing? Was he lying? Was he hallucinating?
Let's get back to the previous thing. So I was talking about a friend of mine who shifted to a new place, like a new company, and when he saw like a lady in black clothing trying to choke him at night. So there are multiple factors behind this. Number one factor, he comes from a very superstitious background, of like family background. They're very religious people. And number two, he was alcoholic. So since the work is kind of stressful, you finish the work, he used to have alcohol, then he used to head straight out to sleep. And third factor, I think what might have happened to him is sleep paralysis. So if you guys don't exactly know what sleep paralysis is, you can Google it up. So in sleep paralysis is a condition where due to stress or due to emotional exertion, it's a condition everybody experiences throughout their dreams. So you can't move your hands, you can't move your legs. You feel like somebody's, holding you down. So depending upon your imagination, depending upon your creativity, you see different stuff. Some people see a small demon, some people see different things. And since this was in this part of the world, he thought it was a jinn. So that is one end of the story. So what about your friend? Yes, could be.
Yeah, well, as I said, I really don't know up till that point. I know he wasn't lying to me, but after that point, I just said maybe he's hallucinating. Maybe he was, sometimes fear can make you see things. That's what I thought, but they're showing me pictures. Actually, they have the pictures of his hand. He has a huge scar across his forearm, from his wrist up to his elbow. Before the picture, maybe I was a little, skeptical, but after the picture, I really have no explanation for it. I might believe the jinn thing, even though it's extremely rare, because that area is known for these type of encounters. And he also
so we could actually share the pictures of these things on social media, but to keep the identity of these people, I don't think it's a really good idea. Let's keep it. So one thing that I would say is, what do you think? Can science really explain the concept of ghosts?
Not really, man. The things like ghosts are abstract. We can't measure them, we can't experiment with them. Maybe science cannot figure out everything.
You might say that, there are ghost hunting, those equipments, the EV frequency stuff, but actually there are many scientists who debunk those things. So we cannot trust the credibility.
Most of these things are debunked, yeah. Maybe today we can't, maybe someday we will, but the thing is you can't measure something that's from a completely different realm, It doesn't make sense.
But my take on this, my final conclusion on this, and I don't know, many people could agree to could agree with me, could not agree with me. I'm not trying to preach atheism or something, but what I would say is, if you can scientifically explain like the concept of God, like, God is something that is restricted to different people's beliefs. I'm not saying it's good or bad, or it's your own thing. So if you believe in God, yes, people believe in God, but can you scientifically explain it? Not yet. I wouldn't say no or yes, I would say not yet. Maybe in the future we can, but as of now, what I would say is one day when we will be able to explain God scientifically, I think soon we would be able to explain this whole ghost and
Maybe
supernatural
when
phenomenon.
we find a way to measure and observe things which aren't physical, maybe.
Yes, because when the first time electricity was introduced in a small village in India, I heard the story. So people actually rejected the whole idea. They thought that it was, black magic or ghost or something. And they're like, no, we're not going to keep this thing in our house. But soon people got adapted to it. So different point of time, different point towards history, we tend to accept stuff. Like, we have to accept, we have to move on.
Yeah, true.
So I guess that's it for now. Thank you so much for joining, Wahab. And
Thank you, everyone.
So until the next episode, it's me, Sajjan Harikumar, and you're listening to The Lad I